everyone, and thanks for coming. I'm Grace Van Mill, and I'd like to welcome you tonight on behalf of the MCIC, the Manitoba Council for International Cooperation. I'm happy to be back with you for another Local Brews and Global Views discussion night. So as we begin, I just want to acknowledge that I'm hosting this event from Winnipeg in Treaty 1 territory, which is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene people. And together we're on the we're on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We're grateful for the chance to host this event, and thanks for joining us. So this evening's discussion will be done webinar style. So you'll be able to see the speakers and ask questions through the Q&A section. You can see here on my screen where to enter your questions, and I'll share them with Jason at the end. We are recording the event, but don't worry, you're not a part of the recording, and it will go up on our YouTube channel soon, which is MCIC video. You can find it there in probably about a week. So this event is part of a series of coffee nights about global issues. We've talked about all kinds of things: community seed banks, women's rights, children's education, and so much more. We regularly host events like this online during COVID times and in person when it's not a pandemic. So please sign up for our e-newsletter to hear about future events, which will go out in an email after this event. Or you can follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So who are we? Well, if you don't know, MCIC is a council of just over 40 organizations working in international development and cooperation around the world. We also work to engage Manitobans on global issues such as the work you're going to hear about tonight. Our vision is simply a just world for everyone. And this event is sponsored in part by funding from Global Affairs Canada, and we're thankful for their support. So the event tonight is being held around the time that the United Nations is celebrating the International Day of Living Together in Peace, which was on the 16th of May. And today, or really tonight, we're going to be learning how development and peace is promoting a culture of peace and sustainability in Myanmar. So we'll be hearing how they're connecting interfaith, religious and community leaders around nurturing an environment of tolerance, gender equality, and respect. So let me just stop sharing so that we can hear more from Jason. So Jason, I can see you're here and ready. Let me just introduce you. So Jason Cegayle is the Manitoba and Thunder Bay animator for Development and Peace, which is the social justice organization of the Catholic Church in Canada. So as part of the Caritas Internationalis network, Development and Peace aims to fundraise for partners in the Global South, striving for social change through education and advocacy initiatives to Canadians. Jason graduated with a Bachelor of Education from the Université de Saint-Boniface and was previously the youth representative for Development and Peace Manitoba. So I know we're all looking forward to hearing more. Please join me in welcoming Jason. You can put a plus sign in the chat as applause. That's what we do here when we're online. So welcome, Jason. I'll turn it over to you and just invite you to share your PowerPoint and do your presentation. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Grace. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here tonight. Again, I apologize that this event was to take place a little bit earlier for the past couple of weeks, but unfortunately, I had to deal with a personal emergency. So thank you again for coming for tonight and being here for the presentation. So I'm just going to make sure that my screen is shared, just make sure I have all that technology rolling. Give me one moment. Just gonna make sure everything is all working.
I think you're looking for the last button on the right there where you were.
Oh, there we go. I think my computer's
There's a slight delay. We can see it now. Thanks.
Awesome, that's perfect. So before we start, again, I would just like to, again, thank everybody for being here this evening and for taking the time out of your day to be here to talk about development and peace, and specifically to talk about the different projects that Development and Peace has been doing in the past with the Rohingya people, some of the ethnic minorities in Myanmar, and as well as the support that Development and Peace has been doing with SEM, which is a project that we'll be talking about a little bit later in the presentation. So again, the title of this presentation, or the title of the project that will very much be highlighted this evening, is called Promoting a Culture of Peace and Sustainability in Myanmar. So that will be the theme for this evening, highlighting the project that Development and Peace has been sponsoring, has been funding with SEM, so the Spirit and Education Movement in Myanmar. So again, once again, welcome and thank you again for being here this evening. Before we start, we're going to I would like to just share a general overview with each and every single one of you. So I'm going to start off by presenting very informally about myself. And for some of you who may know or who may not know development and peace, this will be a great opportunity to either have a review or to understand a little bit more as to what we do as an organization. Afterwards, I will speak very briefly about the Share the Journey, which was the education campaign for 2018 and 2019 that Development and Peace very much highlighted the migrants and refugees. And in particular, the refugees that were coming from the Rohingya ethnic population, taking place in Myanmar and having them flee and seek refuge in Bangladesh. That will help us give a better context and a better base to be able to understand in a broader context what is happening in Myanmar. Lastly, I will spend more time to talk about the project that Development and Peace has been funding with the project entitled Promoting a Culture of Peace and Sustainability in Myanmar, again, featuring spirit and education movements in Myanmar. And we will just end with a couple moments of thanks as well. So for those of you who don't know me, again, my name is Jason Cegayle, as wonderfully presented by Grace. And as mentioned, I just graduated with a Bachelor of Education from the Université de Saint-Boniface. And I'm actually covering for Janelle for this year as she is on maternity leave. Janelle Delorme is the animator for Development and Peace Manitoba and gave birth to a beautiful daughter a couple of weeks ago. And it is very much an honor and a blessing to be able to take upon her footsteps and to be able to lead the organization in this way. I oversee the Archdiocese of St. Boniface, the Archdiocese of Winnipeg, and the Archdiocese of Thunder Bay. And so far, it has been a very wonderful journey to meet such an amazing group of people that have been so passionate about the organization, but as well as the other partnering organizations that share very common goals and interests with development and peace. To your left, there I am at the right, and some of the activities that I participated with Development and Peace were with the Social Eyes, which was a beautiful opportunity to be able to seek and to put ourselves in the shoes of other people that were living the realities that Development and Peace works with. During the Socialize event with many young people, we had the opportunity to hear the story of one of the refugees fleeing from Syria back in 2018, 2019. And she shared with us some of the horrific things that she and her family were undergoing because of the political situation, etc., back in Syria. So we were able to share some food that came from her cultural background and really get that opportunity to listen to one another. And that theme of listening, of deep listening, will very much be a key theme that you will hear later on in the presentation. I've also enjoyed speaking to many of the Catholic schools here in Manitoba, especially with our young people, with the Catholic Schools Day here in Manitoba. And another highlight that I would like to share is I was the co-organizer, along with Diana Ludwig, for Development and Peace's Share the Journey Solidarity Walk that took place in June 2019. And it was very much a beautiful event, an event that really highlighted solidarity, which is one of the teachings, Catholic social teachings, which we'll see very soon. You will notice that I'm holding a poster with a young man's face. And that was an opportunity for me to be able to share with many people, along with other speakers as well, the different campaigns of development and peace. And is actually one, that boy there actually belongs to a Rohingya family in Myanmar that fled to Bangladesh. So you'll notice that you'll see this poster a little bit later, and you'll understand a little bit more why later on in the presentation. I am also a youth and young adult ministry leader in a parish, and as well as past campus president for the Université de Saint-Boniface for Development and Peace. So I imagine you can all think that Development and Peace is very much a very important organization for me, that I hold very closely and very dear to my heart. And for many of you that are involved with Development and Peace, I hope and pray that it is the same for you as well. So we will continue on with a short video. I will just switch over here. I'll just give it a moment to load. And this video is just going to explain very briefly what Development and Peace is, who we are, and what we do. And I hope that it will inspire you as well to be able to understand a little bit more about development and peace. I'm just going to share my sound and make sure that everything is working. All right, so let's take a listen.
I think it's important, anybody who wants to kind of trace the roots of development and peace, to kind of go back to 1967. You had the Canadian bishops coming back from Rome. They'd met the bishops from the South, and they'd seen, number one, the level of poverty in the South. But they'd also seen the church in action, working to overcome that poverty. And they decided out of that they really would try as bishops to do something in Canada.
Les années 60, ça a été la fin du Concile Vatican II, qui a donné un grand espoir à l'Église et qui a, je pense, certains documents conciliaires ont servi d'inspiration aux évêques canadiens pour la création de développement et paix, en plus évidemment de l'encyclique du pape Paul VI, Populorum Progressio.
J'aimerais rendre témoignage au pape Paul VI. Il a dit cette phrase à la fin de son discours qui est restée vraiment célèbre. Désormais, le nouveau nom de la paix, c'est développement.
Comme vers l'ultime espoir de la concorde de la paix.
Vatican II was so important for me, and I think because it opened, as they said, it opened up the dustbins, took the dust out of the church. And it really spoke to me about social justice. I think I always had inside of me this, I hated injustices, and it seemed now the church was on the right path.
At the same time, in Canadian society more generally, we were having Expo 67. We were celebrating our 100th anniversary. We were excited about the world with big political changes coming in. So people kind of had an optimism and a sense that we can take on the world, we can do things, we can make a better life for everybody. And development is peace kind of was given birth in that kind of a climate. The man who brought a kind of a very different vision of what helping the poor was all about was Romeo Meoni. Romeo was the first director of development and peace. So the orientation that the organization took on very quickly is we are here to work together with the poor. Not even when people say give them a hand up and all that stuff. No, we are equals, we are human, we both have dignity, we both have a right to a decent future.
It took some time for me to become aware of that change in philosophy. Because all of a sudden we were being told, or it was being suggested that it was far better to invest in the efforts of people in the third world who were planning their own future. It's a much different philosophy than charity.
Les gens étaient de plus en plus conscients qu'il y avait des inégalités criantes dans la société.
If there was a famine in Bangladesh, you didn't wait 5 months to find out about it. You knew when it was happening because the media was there. So the world was becoming very much smaller. And the sense of development and peace work was that we are part of the global village. We are our neighbor's neighbor.
All right. Well, I hope all of you enjoyed that video. Again, that was, I believe that was one of the videos that was created to celebrate Development Peace's 50 years back in 2017. So for those of you who are familiar with Development Peace, I hope it's a good review. And for those of you who are new to Development and Peace, I hope it also inspires you as well and creates more of a stable foundation to understand a little bit more about the work of Development and Peace. I'm just going to give a little moment to my computer. It's working a little bit slower. Thank you for your patience, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing for a second and I will just reshare. My apologies again, everyone, for that technical difficulties. Okay, I think this is working now.
Yeah, everything looks great.
Awesome, thanks, Grace. Okay, so we're going to continue on. Just to share a couple points about who we are as Development and Peace. So again, all this information about Development and Peace comes from our website. So after this presentation, I strongly encourage you to visit our website and to explore it a little bit more. So Development and Peace supports partners in the Global South who promote alternatives to unfair social, political, and economic structures, and educates the Canadian population about the causes of poverty and mobilizes Canadians towards actions for change. So with Development and Peace, Development and Peace has this beautiful role, again, founded within the Catholic Church, but this beautiful role of being able to not only educate, but to fundraise and to also have a pillar of advocacy. So Development and Peace, again, being part of a broader network of Caritas Internationalis. So there's several different organizations of Caritas in different countries, and Development and Peace being a branch of Caritas, and also being the official social justice organization of the Catholic Church, has a beautiful role of educating Canadians about our partners in the Global South. And with that education comes with fundraising. So for Development and Peace, one of the things that we do is we do a lot of fundraising, especially during our Share Land campaign, where we are called to give to the poor as a form of almsgiving. And a lot of that money goes to serving our partners in the Global South and funding their grassroots project. So Development and Peace doesn't go into the countries in the Global South and the partners in their work, but rather we help support them and support their grassroots organization. So they have their full autonomy, and it's also an anti-colonial approach as well to development. The Development and Peace also works very closely with advocacy in working with our government to be able to continue supporting international relations and international aid as well. Development and Peace is also inspired and rooted in Catholic social teaching. And for some of you who are familiar or not familiar, here's a list of some of the Catholic social teachings that Development and Peace looks at when it comes to looking at our partners and who will receive funding from our partners. So the projects must entail some of these Catholic social teachings, such as the dignity of the human person, solidarity, stewardship of creation, participation, economic justice, the common good, the preferential option for the poor, subsidiarity and the role of government, rights and responsibilities, and peace. So you'll see very much in many projects that Development and Peace funds and also help supports is many of them, all of them will have different components of Catholic social teaching in it, which very much lives the gospel for us as Christians. I also wanted to highlight that Development and Peace works with several different types of organizations, and not only Christian organizations, but Development and Peace works with different organizations of different ethnicities and different languages and different religious backgrounds as well. Development and Peace, again, as mentioned in the video, was established in 1967 by the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops in response to Pope Paul VI encyclical letter, Populorum Progressio. So for those of you who are not very familiar with the term encyclical, basically it's like a letter address given to the church to be able to understand as to how we can respond to our daily world in light of the church. So Populorum Progressio means development of people. And here Pope Paul VI talks about how the economy should benefit all mankind and not only the rich. So overall, the encyclical is very much a response to hunger, poverty, ignorance, to countries and their situations, and notably in the Global South as well. So it's very much a pillar and source of the inspiration of Development and Peace's work. As we move on in the presentation, I will continue talking a little bit more about Myanmar and the project that is taking place in that country. So very briefly, Myanmar is a country that is found in Southeast Asia. And this country is very much surrounded by several other neighboring countries, such as Thailand, Laos, China, India, and Bangladesh. And the reason why I bring Bangladesh is because Bangladesh will be another country which we will talk about regarding the Rohingya people that relates very closely to the project that's taking place in Myanmar as well. One other piece of information that I would generally like to share about Myanmar is that Myanmar has a wide variety of ethnic groups, and quite often these ethnic groups are discriminated upon, as it is in many different countries as well, and often live in a lot of dire situations as well, in which their livelihood is very much put at stake. Some of the religious information I would like to share regarding Myanmar, which are very important information when it comes to talking about the upcoming project that I will talk about soon. So 90% of the Burmese population practice Buddhism. So Myanmar is a Buddhist majority country, which practices from the school of Theravada Buddhism. And the second largest faith that is practiced is Christianity, with only 8%, around 8% of the population that practices this faith. And many ethnic minorities also practice this faith, such as the Chin, the Kachins, the Karen, and the Naga. And again, this Christian influence dates back from all the way to the first arrival of the American and European missionaries. We also then have Islam, which is the third largest practicing faith, around 2%. The Rohingya are actually an ethnic Muslim minority that are heavily discriminated upon by powerful nationalist movement in favor of the protection of Buddhist identity. And last, we have a very, very small minority, which are animists. So you can probably get a more general picture regarding what is happening in Myanmar. And there's very much a lot of cultural battle, but as well as a lot of religious discussion, religious dialogue that still needs to take place because there's still a lot of discrimination that exists, especially within different religious groups as well. Just to highlight briefly the political situation in Myanmar, again, as I mentioned before, many ethnic groups in Myanmar face systemic discrimination. So maybe to draw a little bit of history, back in 1982, this is prior to when, this was close to when Myanmar was colonized by the English. In 1982, there was a citizenship law that enforced discrimination against certain ethnic minorities, including the Rohingya. And with that being said, the Rohingya became stateless because they were denied citizenship, they were denied equal opportunity and freedom of expression. So they were very much people who did not have the right to own their own land. They were people who did not have the right to have protection, etc. And were very much targeted by nationalists and also very much targeted by the military as well. Until this date, they still remain to be stateless people. Back in 2019, Gambia filed the first international lawsuit against Myanmar at the International Court of Justice. And during this time, Myanmar was being very widely known for having a lot of ethnic genocide by discriminating and also killing many of the Rohingya people as well. I apologize, it's a bit cut down there in my slide. But in 2020, Myanmar held the national election and the NLD, the National League of Democracy, won, which led to much conflict leading to the military to revolt. So we can see that this is not just a one-time and one-year situation. This has been very much a situation that very much took place throughout several years, and the situation also getting worse as well. At this moment, I'm going to share a little bit more about Share the Journey and what Development Peace has done in the past with the Rohingya people in Bangladesh coming from Myanmar. So to talk a little bit more about the Rohingya refugee crisis. So since August 2019, more than 670,000 Rohingya have fled violence from Myanmar to seek refuge in Bangladesh, which you can see over here. So here's Myanmar. The Rakhine state is actually found at the very close to the coast here, and Bangladesh is the neighboring country in which they seek refuge. Many of them have sought refuge due to ethnic cleansing of these people by military, including the destruction of villages, rape, torture, etc. It is very devastating what these people have gone through in order to seek refuge. And in Bangladesh, Kutupalong is the largest refugee camp in the world with 626,000 refugees, and most of them actually being women and young children as well. So for many of you who probably are not really aware of the situation or have a visual of the situation, I'm going to share a video that came from Development and Peace about the Share the Journey campaign, in which we highlight one of the families coming from the Rohingya ethnic group. And we will be able to hear what they are going through and the aid and work that Development and Peace has done in the past for them. So let's take a listen.
How would you feel if you had to flee your home
Just make
today?
sure my sound is being shared. It is shared. Okay, my apologies.
The children were really scared. They didn't want to come out of the house. They asked us, "Mother, where will you find us if the Burmese army kill us?"
Persecuted in Burma, nearly 1 million Rohingya have taken refuge in Bangladesh. Among them is the Hossain family. Here is their journey.
Our daughter was 5 years old. She didn't understand much. Then when she saw that many people started to escape and we had to go somewhere else, she understood it all. We escaped from our home when the army started deliberately shooting at people.
We stayed on roads for 3 nights after escaping. We had almost no food when we left. We had some snacks, which we fed to our children.
I carried my daughter on my chest since she was sick and she couldn't walk. The number of corpses we walked over while coming here is countless. We still feel like crying whenever these thoughts cross our minds.
I had my own house. The houses were big. We would farm, cultivate bitter leaf, and plow. We made a good living, and we would have spare cash in hand after everything. Now, we have run out of money. Our country is divided. We don't have any more money.
In a few short months, Kutupalong camp has become the largest refugee camp in the world. It extends as far as the eye can see and is home to 626,000 refugees, 60% of whom are children. With support from the Canadian government, Development and Peace and its partner Caritas Bangladesh are providing support to 100,000 vulnerable people, including the Hossain family.
Caritas gave us a large package when we first arrived here. Caritas gave us an umbrella, a gas stove, sandals, and clothes as well.
We've been given almost everything we need. They gave us soap and latrines for the small children. We were given water jugs, a vessel, a bowl, everything. This gas stove has turned out to be very useful because when we had to go to the forest to collect wood for fuel, we were killed, slaughtered, and then taken away. What if my 4 children were killed because I asked them to go collect wood in the forest? We were really happy after getting this. For 1 month, we could cook in peace. But now it's been almost 6 weeks and the gas supply has run out.
We are indebted to them for their help. We didn't expect this much.
We received trees, bamboo, and other materials for building houses from Caritas. Before, our house used to sway when there were strong winds, but now it's more solid. We're really happy and thankful to Allah for everything. We hope they will keep helping us in the future.
If Bangladesh and Myanmar settle the issue of our return through meetings and discussions, then we will go back. But we don't want to go back until we get justice for the torture we had to go through.
Share the journey with Rihanna, her family, and the 68.5 million children, women, and men who have been forced to flee their homes.
So one of my earnest requests for you would be to please share the journey for the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. Pray for them.
So again, every time I watch that video, it always pulls somewhere in my heart to just see the beauty of what Development and Peace really does to be able to give dignity to the human person, regardless of their situation. And it was such an honor and a pleasure to be part of the solidarity walk that took place back in 2019, inspired by Share the Journey, inspired by the miles and miles of kilometers and however you want to measure it, of distance that the Rohingya people have to flee in order to be able to seek refuge. So again, I strongly encourage you to visit Development and Peace's website to get more information about not only the Rohingya people, but as well as our past campaigns as well. Just give a moment for my computer to share. That's working. Give it a moment. So as my computer, again, I apologize, my computer is a little bit slow, but as we wait a little bit for the computer to share the screen, the next portion I would like to talk about, I'll stop sharing actually, and I'll share back again. The next thing that I would like to talk about actually is regarding some of the projects that Development and Peace has been funding with SEM. So I'm just going to fast forward. To the next slide. Almost there. Okay. All right. So the last portion of this presentation will be dedicated in highlighting the project that Development and Peace has been funding in Myanmar. And the name of this project is called Promoting a Culture of Peace and Sustainability in Myanmar. So before we get into this project, I want you to look back in that video where Mohammed, the last person that was interviewed, said that we do not want to go back unless there is a conversation, there is a discussion that is being taken place. And one of the main solutions to peace building is dialogue. And that is very much something that this organization, Spirit and Education Movement, along with the Funding Development and Peace, has really put into place to really start that dialogue. And with that being said, let's now take a look at some of the detail of this project as well. So the duration of the project took place in August 1st, 2019 to July 31st, 2020. My apologies, there is a mistake there. And the project location took place all across Myanmar. So in the regions of Mandalay, West Bago, Madway, Cegayle. And again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the name of those places. And as well as in 13 different townships. I will explain this at the end, but there's a reason why the Spirit and Education Movement has decided to work with different regions in the country of Myanmar. And one of the main reasons actually is because this dialogue needs to take place in many different areas. Both with religious leaders, both with people within the communities, in order to start that discussion about finding not only our differences, but finding common ground within our dialogue, working together, and hoping that this attitude and this change will also transmit in having a larger conversation about the Rohingya people as well. So some of the principal beneficiaries of the intervention and the principal target is mostly with the ordained Sangha, ranging from progressive and nationalist and lay Sangha leaders. So for those of you who don't know, Sangha are the group of religious Buddhist monks and nuns. And to give you a little bit more of background information, which we'll also revisit, is a lot of the hate speech and discrimination very much comes from sort of like the Buddhist leaders, where this rhetoric very much drives a certain ideology within the community to then perpetuate discrimination to ethnic minorities, especially the Rohingya. And the second target is faith-based groups, to be able to have that discussion both intra-faith and interfaith as well, with dialogue and deep listening. So let's take a look at some of the details of the project. To give you a little bit more of context and analysis, so the Burman, the Bamar ethnic group, which controls the military and the government, makes about 2/3 of the population. With several minority ethnic nationalities, 135 are recognized, which makes up the remaining 1/3. Several ethnic nationalities live on resource-rich border areas. Some of those communities are the Karen, the Shan, the Mon, the Chin, the Kachin, the Rakhine, and the Karenni. And in 2012, rapid political and economic transformations, intercommunal violence broke out in Rakhine State. The Rohingyas were excluded from the 2014 census. So again, denied their citizenship, denied their status as people as well. And so Spirit and Education movement really works with a lot of religious leaders to be able to continue dialogue and peace building as well. So the Buddhist Sangha led nationalist movements have been engaged in encouraging discrimination against mainly Muslim minorities. And the Sangha have maintained a position in Myanmar society as spiritual and cultural leaders. So because they are such respected people in terms of being leaders of their spirituality and cultural leaders as well, it is really important that SAM and other organizations that share the same goal work with those cultural leaders to be able to make that sociocultural change as well with the general public in their area. Hate speech by Sangha members have become barriers to peaceful coexistence. So it's also one of the main areas that Development and Peace has been supporting, and as well as SAM to be able to continue that dialogue. So the project aims to target a group of Sangha members to become fully engaged in the promotion of communal harmony by actively opposing violence and nurturing a climate of tolerance, respect, and compassion. So here are some of the 5 issue-based areas in which the project highlights. So we have conflict prevention, community-based peace building, gender, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means later on, interfaith engagement, and Buddhist education. So in terms of conflict prevention, one of the goals is to really channel the Sangha actions to build up mechanisms to help deal with conflict. So rather than revolting in or encouraging rather discriminatory speech or rhetoric to encourage violence, how will we be able to take preventative measures such as prevention, warning, management, post-conflict, trauma healing to be able to prevent from further situations to get worse. The second is community-based peace building. So focusing on addressing development inequalities by strengthening community resilience and building as bottom-up approach to peace building. One thing I would like to highlight in terms of peace building is the bottom-up approach. So here, with this project, the bottom-up approach really encourages the change to come from within for each and every single individual. So with each and every single individual being able to denounce discrimination and to be able to make the change and being able to continue with dialogue, therefore it will further transmit into higher levels of society in order to be able to change the whole country and to change the way how people are thinking as well, and the way how people view one another also. So starting from as an individual, then starting as a community and getting larger as well. One of the other topics that was discussed is gender. And in this, what we mean by gender is to really encourage dialogue within the Sangha monks or male who are more oppressed by gendered social norms. So it's really encouraging to fight the gender norm that men have to be super strong, that men have to be not like emotionless, etc., that we cannot convey emotion, but it's really to demystify that barrier and to really encourage the Sangha monks to dismantle that gendered norm and to be able to work on deep listening, to be able to work on dialogue, to be able to connect emotionally to themselves as well. Interfaith engagement is another area that is being worked on, and SAM continues to work to continue building on pilot interfaith dialogue within Sangha members with others of different faiths. So as you know, there are different religions in Myanmar, and this dialogue needs to continue with people within their own faith and as well as people in other faiths, because there's also discrimination that exists within one another as well. And lastly, one of the other issues that has to be looked at is the Buddhist education. So being very critical about curriculum, structure, and really looking at the authority of the Sangha as an institution and its influence on education as well. One of the outputs that I would like to share in regards to the activities and things that that have taken place is first with the first output. So issue-based Sangha groups set up and strengthened. So the first part here that I would like to share is an ongoing mapping and analysis. So needs of Sangha groups, stakeholders, analysis, and potential partnerships. So here we very much have a group that is working on doing a lot more research and understanding the needs of the Sangha, what they need, in terms of making sure to be able to have that dialogue. And we also have here to provide workshops and skills training for the Sangha groups. So with the focus group discussions and the key informant interviews are some of the ways that the staff from SEM are working with the Sangha to be able to continue to provide workshops and skill trainings for them to continue dialogue. The second output is based on issue-based groups extended to include wider strategic groups and stakeholders. So the first part that we have here is networking engagement with extended stakeholders in groups. And here we work very closely with, SEM works very closely with different nationalists and different organizations and different groups to be able to continue to have that dialogue. And one thing that you probably have noticed from this part of the presentation is that there are no pictures. And there's a specific reason for that. Because of the sensitivity of the whole conflict that is happening in Myanmar, now there were no pictures that were taken in order to protect the identities of those who are involved with the project, those who are working with the project, and also to respect their safety as well. So that is another thing I would like to note. In regards to the second point here, to provide dialogue space for integration of Sangha groups and extended stakeholder groups. Here we include different communities, interfaith and other groups to engage in peace building actions relating to the 5 issues that was presented earlier. And lastly, another work that was taking place is a study tour for Sangha groups and extended stakeholders to be able to explore other regions, such as Thailand and Sri Lanka, and to participate in this dialogue with other people as well from neighboring countries to continue those workshops and training sessions as well. Output 3 is concerning dialogue concerning Buddhist curriculum and institutions in Myanmar among Buddhist scholars and internationally engaged Buddhists that are established. So here, some of the points that I have here is intra-dialogue for Buddhist institutions and Buddhist literacy. So one of the main objectives is to provide a space for dialogue among diverse Buddhist literacy groups, including nationalist groups, to critically examine teachings and the ways how Buddhist knowledge is being disseminated. So key targets are in Myanmar are certain scholars and academics and Buddhist literacy groups, such as the Pariyatti, the Dhamma School, and the Mabapa. Lastly, with international conferences and meetings, one of the goals is to be able to learn from other countries, to be able to learn from dialogue from other neighboring countries as well, in order to widen the perspectives to help improve the dialogue situation in Myanmar. And lastly, one of the other outputs I would like to share that it's in line with output 1 is collaborative initiatives developed and implemented. So with the peace building initiatives that are very much highlighting work within the community, there's also follow-up as well. So the SEM staff have been trained to be able to follow up on not only the peace building initiatives, but to follow up on the projects itself in order to have sustainable projects last for quite some time. So in conclusion, what is the relevance of the project with development and peace programs? So this program really does respond to Development and Peace's strategic plan from 2016 to 2021, which is peace and reconciliation. And one more information I would like to share regarding that is that the project and program is highlighted on a national and community-based level. So with that being said, is the approach of the project is really to work with several communities, not only the Rohingya at this moment, because to be in the Rakhine state in Myanmar is very, very dangerous and could also harm the Rohingya people that are still there and the Rohingya people that are in Bangladesh at this moment. So it's sort of direct, indirect way, however you may want to phrase that, of being able to help the situation with the Rohingya people. So by creating this dialogue within the community of peace and reconciliation, of deep listening, the hope is that this project continues to create further dialogue to be able to find peace with the Rohingya people as well. Hopefully in the next future, hopefully in the next couple of years as well in the near future. Overall, Development and Peace wants to contribute to the development of peaceful coexistence with different religious groups, with different ethnic groups, linguistic groups, community-based conflict resolution through deep listening and dialogue, and interfaith or interethnic dialogues as well. So again, Development and Peace and SEM work very hard together to be able to focus on peace building through dialogue and finding peace through dialogue. So that is all the information I would like to share with all of you this evening. Again, there's so much more to share about this beautiful project. So if you'd like to know more, I encourage you to contact me. So again, here's my email. So if you want to take a screenshot or take a picture, I strongly encourage you to do so. And I would like to thank, first of all, Micheline or Mika Lévesque, Dominique Godbout, and Judith Fauché, who work with the International Programs Department with Development and Peace. The majority of this project was based off of the report that was written by Micheline Lévesque, who is a programs officer for Asia and part of the development program team. So if you have any questions in particular, or would like more information, I strongly encourage you to email one of these amazing ladies to be able to get some more information about Development and Peace and the project that's been taking place with SEM.
Thanks so much, Jason. So what we're going to do is just move on to questions. Screen's just adjusting here. Sorry, just going to share my screen here. So if you can see here on the screen where to enter your question in the Q&A, if you have one, you just click the Q&A button and put your question in. So I'll give you a second to do that. I'll just start with a question for me. Jason, could you tell me a bit more about why it was important for Development and Peace to get involved in this peace building project in Myanmar?
For sure, that's a really great question. So as I mentioned before in the presentation, Development Peace really does search to be able to respond to humanitarian crises, to be able to respond to ethnic genocide in light of Catholic social teaching. And for those of you who may have been following the history of how the political situation has evolved in Myanmar, it's definitely something that has caused a lot of headlines or provoked a lot of headlines. So it's something that Development and Peace worked very hard to be able to put into place and to react very promptly in regards to what is happening in Myanmar.
Thanks, Jason. And I'm just curious if you could share a bit more about what the effect of the recent civil unrest in Myanmar has had on this project or others that you have in the region.
For sure. So some of the effects that have been taking place because of the civil unrest is still, unfortunately, ongoing persecution, ongoing non-openness to dialogue, etc. So there's a lot of things that are still happening. And even quite recently with COVID, unfortunately, which has taken a lot of toll on the project as well. Unfortunately, the international department hasn't gotten a lot of follow-up, especially because the political situation since February 2021 has very much escalated. And as well as the pandemic, being able to understand how the situation is going there. So unfortunately, we don't have much information currently, but hoping and praying that we get some information and some ways as to how we can also assist sometime soon.
Thank you. So, here's a question from a participant. They're asking if you could comment on how well the process has been moving in terms of cooperation from the Sangha. How receptive have they been to this process or this project?
Oh, that's a great question. So thank you for the person that asked that question. From this project, there has been a lot of improvement in terms of dialogue, things advancing with communication with the messages with the Sangha, with the people as well. All of that to say is that there's still more work that needs to be done, especially with this heightened political situation. But things are moving, things are improving. So we're hoping and praying that it continues to move in that direction as well. I also encourage you, for whoever asked that question, to reach out to Micheline. She has more information to be able to give to you in regarding that. So I strongly encourage you to contact her afterwards.
You might be getting a few more questions about the project, so you might want to put her email in the chat or something.
Sure.
But lots of people are saying thank you. Thanks for an excellent question. Thanks for answering my question. That's good. We have a question. Someone's just asking how Development and Peace went about establishing a relationship with the Sangha in order to work with them. There's a follow-up question, but I'll let you do that one first.
That's a really great question. I'll just paste it here, the email. I hope I have it. Was it, sorry, Grace, I just want to make sure, was it well sent, the email?
You go ahead and I'll copy it to the main chat.
Okay, sounds good. So with Development and Peace, in order to start that discussion, very much had to start off first with SEM. So SEM, the Spirit and Education movement, had to work very closely with the Sangha to be able to start the dialogue, to start the discussion. And a lot of it has to do with dialogue. A lot of it has to do with organizing occasions for the Sangha to be able to have that discussion. So it very much had to start off with SEM, and they very much know the region very well. They very much know the communities very well to be able to start to have that dialogue. So it's not necessarily the Development piece that started the dialogue, but it's supporting SEM to be able to start that dialogue because it's a grassroots organization original to Myanmar and other neighboring countries as well.
Okay, and their sort of follow-up question or related question is, how did Development and Peace reconcile with the anti-Muslim sentiments that were loudly broadcast through the national media? So sort of, I think, talking about the challenging context you're operating in there.
For sure, that's a really great question. So if I understand correctly, it's the relationship with how Development Peace has been responding to the anti-Muslim response?
I think so. I think that's what they're asking about. How did you deal with that? How did you respond to that? Yeah.
That's a really great question. Unfortunately, I don't have the response to that right away right now. So whoever asked that question, I strongly encourage you to contact Michelin. Please keep me in CC as well. I would also like to know too, and to get a response to that as well, because it's a beautiful question.
Okay. Someone else is just asking if you could share a bit more about how COVID has affected the Rohingya in Myanmar.
That's a really great question. So in general, it's really hard to be able to know exactly the situations that is happening in Myanmar. First and foremost, because there's a very intense political situation that's taking place. So it's very hard for the media to be able to get much information that is happening, and especially with the Rohingya people. Back when I had my meeting with Michelin, with Judith and Dominique, they all were very much on the same boat of understanding that it was very hard to be able to know the situation right now because of the situation with politics and as well as the COVID situation. And so unfortunately, we don't know more other than it's quite tricky to get more info now.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just putting out a last call for any questions. I think we've answered the ones that have come in so far. I think you shared a lot of really interesting details about how Development and Peace works with local groups and how the situation in Myanmar continues to unfold. So I just want to, I think we have another question coming. Okay, I'm not sure if you'll know this level of detail about the project as well, but someone is asking if you know anything about how the SEM project people were able to convince the Sangha to enter into dialogue. Were other groups present at the dialogues? For example, were different groups present in the same dialogue sessions, such as the Rohingya and the Sangha together in the dialogue sessions, or was it sort of one group at a time, that kind of thing?
No, that's a really great question. So one piece of information that I would like to share with you is that SEM work very closely with other sister organizations as well to be able to continue that dialogue. The sister organizations, I don't have the name off right away. So SEM, actually, no, I just found it. So SEM is one of the 8 sister organizations represented under the umbrella of Sathira Kosi Nagra Pradeepa Foundation. So from my understanding that there's different organizations that also work together with SEM. But again, I strongly encourage you to seek more information from Michelin. So I encourage you to send an email to them as well and keep me in CC. I'm excited to know more as well.
Okay, so it sounds like they're working quite a lot with local partners and that maybe you don't know the exact context given the safety and privacy issues of who is in the group, but maybe we'll be able to get those answers for you. So Jason has put that contact email in the chat. If you have a question that you didn't get as sufficient answers you were hoping for, but I think you provided lots of great information tonight, Jason. And I just wanted to thank everyone for these excellent questions and for your participation tonight. And I want to say that if you enjoyed this presentation, stay tuned for our next Local Brews and Global Views in the fall. Watch our social media for updates. And I want to say thank you so much to Jason, and also just let everyone know that a short survey, your feedback on this event will arrive soon in your email via Eventbrite. And just in case you don't get that, I'm also putting it here in the chat. Just let us know what you think. Let us know how your opinion of the event was. It'll help us learn and grow for our next session. So Jason, thank you so much. Please, our applause is plus signs in the chat. I can see them already rolling by. So everyone's very grateful for what you shared tonight. Thank you so much. Put some pluses in the chat if you enjoyed tonight's talk, and that'll be our applause for Jason. So thank you so much, Jason, and thanks everyone for attending.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Grace. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night, everyone.